Hey everybody, it's Kareem and welcome to another episode of I Read What I Read. So this episode, I have to make a confession. It's really good to say these things out loud. So here it comes. All right. I have now officially determined that I am an Elin Hilderbrand stan. Not a fan, a stan. But with that, a caveat. I am not uber obsessed, but I absolutely stand for Miss Hilderbrand's books. Love them, love them, love them. I've read about a handful of her books now, and I basically have made the determination that I'm going to read through the summer. I plan to do my summer on Nantucket by reading her books. Now, it's actually spring summer because I'm going to take it all the way from now through Labor Day, and I'm going to read as many of her books as I can get my hand on. The latest one I read on my Kindle, and that was called Nantucket Nights. Nantucket Nights is about three friends who have a long friendship, decades-long friendship, and they have this ritual that they do every year. And one year, something tragically goes wrong, and one of the women goes missing. And the story basically develops around that. Now, that was enough to get me into the book. Most of Ellen's book I had never really heard of before. The first book I read of hers was 5-Star Weekend, and I absolutely loved it. They actually are making or releasing, I think in July, they're releasing the series of that on Peacock. I saw that in a movie when I went to see Devil Wears Prada. So I saw the advertisement for that. So that would be the second book of hers that I know of that was made for television, because she also wrote The Perfect Couple, which starred Nicole Kidman, and I forgot the leading man in that. I think it was Liev Schreiber, I think, but I forgot. Anywho, that was on Netflix too. So I saw The Perfect Couple, but I haven't read the book. I read 5-Star Weekend, and I absolutely loved it. That pretty much started me on my Hildebrand journey. After that, I'm not sure if it was Summerland or Beautiful Day. I think it was Summerland. That was my next book. I read Summerland. I read Beautiful Day. I read The Blue Bistro recently. I read that immediately after reading Nantucket Nights. And I'm currently reading her very first novel called The Beach Club. Elin started writing in 2000, so she's been writing for over 25 years. She's actually just recently released a book called The Academy, and she wrote that, I think, with her daughter, if I read that correctly. So I know a little bit about her, and what I know from the back of her books and her little blurb on Amazon. But I really don't want to know too much more, because I feel like I'm learning Elin through her books. Now, Nantucket Night, y'all. I did a couple of shorts on that because I started Nantucket Nights, let's say a Thursday or a Friday. And within 48 hours, I was done, including reading it all in one day. I started it and had a few chapters. I was only a few chapters in. And then one Saturday, I just kind of sat there and read the rest of it, finished it in kind of one sitting, if you will. Now, I don't read a book a day. I know there's some people out there who are voracious readers and can read a book a day. So my version of speed reading and reading really fast is a 2-day turnaround from the time that I start the book. So Nantucket Nights had me like that, okay? Now I haven't read all of her books, and she has over 20 books. Again, she's been writing for 20 years. It was on the spicier side of all the books I've read from her thus far. I was like, Elin, what's happening? Why? What was this story about? I mean, the premise where it was built on friendship and then something happened and something tragic was enough to get me there. But I tell you what, she put a lot of it was erotic. It was a lot. It was a lot of sex scenes. And I mean, I'm a little prudish, just a little bit. I mean, I think that sex on television and sex in movies has become incredibly egregious, just annoying. And I know there are others out there that share my sentiments because I've seen them post things, and I haven't posted them, but they've posted my thoughts. So anyway, that all to say, I'm a little prudish, but I can take romance and I can take, sex within books if it's tasteful. It's got to be tasteful and tactful. I don't want to read smut. Nantucket Nights for me was on her spicier side, but there were also some really undertones that became overtones, like messages that I was like, oh, message, what you saying here? I mean, because she really explored friendship, self-identity, self-awareness, character, morals. I mean, there was a lot in Nantucket Nights, okay? Now, I always say I try not to give spoilers, and I really am trying my best not to, but the book was meaty, and this was the first time I actually highlighted and bookmarked some things. So I won't use character names, but I will talk about some of the themes, like I said. So the book centers around women who are supposed to be friends, but the saying, with friends like these, who needs enemies? That's Nantucket Nights, okay? I don't know if Elin ever experienced anything like she has written about in any of her books, but I tell you what, she writes as if she's experienced it because it's so real, and at times it's so visceral, and I'm just like, whoa, like I said, it's just like, that's why it's so enthralling. Like, you just get caught up in it, and the only drama I want to do or want to see is in a book, because I try to keep my life drama free. Amen. But if it's in a story, if it's between the safety of these two pages, I mean, I can get with it, or the safety of the binder there and within the pages, I can get with it. So Nantucket Night, again, like I said, there was deception and betrayal and so many twists and turns. There were so many things that make you think that you would just have to stop and kind of process. And almost to a certain extent that there might have needed to be. No, I mean, on any book, quite frankly, you could have a trigger warning. But if you have ever been through some of the stuff that the people in that book had experienced, it could take you back there, because, again, she's very vivid with her writing, detailed, and all of the people seem real. You know what I mean, she really brings her characters to life. And I think that's one of the things that draws me to her writing, is because Nantucket is absolutely a character in her books. I don't think she makes any mistakes about that or any qualms about that. Nantucket is a featured character in her book, and I love that, actually. I love that, and more on that in a minute. But she also writes people that can be relatable, if you will, whether it's, quite frankly, someone you want to be, or someone you know, or someone you are. You know what I mean? Not everybody from Nantucket, or not everybody will be able to relate to the social economic background of those in Nantucket or in her book. But I believe she incorporates people who are not from the island, or characters who are not from the island, who come there and become kind of ingratiated into the island. So you don't have to have that background necessarily to be able to appreciate what happens on the island. And to that end, I intend to visit Nantucket very, very soon. In fact, I'm actually planning a trip. And yes, I have always wanted to go, but I have been more inspired by Elin's writing, because she just takes you there. And in every single one of her stories, which, again, this woman is incredibly talented, because in every single one of her stories, it's like you're reintroduced to Nantucket. And each story has its own story. It's not, oh, here we go again. We're back on this island, and she's going to write the same people, the same. No, every story that I've read thus far in my handful or half a dozen of books that I've read, because I've lost count already, but it's around that 5 or 6. Every story has been different, and I've enjoyed every story for its own storyline. Another thing that stood out right away in this book was the diversity. 2 of the characters are white and 1 is black. Now, from what I heard about Nantucket, it's a little lily. It's a little bit of a snow globe, if you catch my drift, right? That's what I heard about it. What I've seen online represents a different picture. Like, I have done some research, about visiting the island, and I did find one picture that had a nice little rainbow. And my last visit to Martha's Vineyard, I was talking to someone, and I mentioned that I wanted to visit Nantucket. And actually, a couple of people, I mentioned that too on that trip. And both of the people who represented different demographics, very different demographics, now that I think about it, and I'm actually glad that I'm even remembering this, they both said that Martha's Vineyard was a lot more laid back, and it was just a lot better for, either relaxing or the kind of laid back vibe. And one person who was also an African American or Black woman like myself had the sentiment that it wasn't really worth going there. But in that same conversation with her, there was another Black woman who said she had had great times in Nantucket. So the bottom line is I'm going to go see for myself. And I do intend to take Elin with me because she wrote the Blue Book. This is basically her travel guide. And she says, get to know Nantucket like a local. And that's what I want to do. I'm going to go in the early fall. And the reason I do that is because that's exactly what I did last year for Martha's Vineyard. I went when there was no one around and I felt like a local. I felt like I had the island to myself, except for, again, the people who live there year round. So I figured my best introduction to Nantucket is to do it the same way that I did, Martha's Vineyard. So stay tuned for more about that trip. And again, this summer we're going to be, on the beach of Nantucket, or the beaches, wherever we are in the latest book. So again, back to Nantucket Nights. So this is what I really wanted to focus on. Well, at least one of the ones I wanted to focus on. So the book itself, I definitely rated 5 stars. Everything that I like about Elin was present in the book. Again, I like her commitment to diversity. I like that one of the main characters was a Black woman. I like that she explored friendship between the 2 different cultures and the 2 different races. And so far, though some would, I already know, and I can hear in the back of my mind, certain people would have, criticism about how she treats the people, the ethnicity. So far, I have not been offended by how she's written these characters. And to be fair, I don't know why we expect people to write from our point of view or our background. Everybody, if they could write a story or their own story or anything like that, is going to write from their perspective, their point of view, their culture, all those things, right? So I just can appreciate that Elin has come across this diverse group of people in her lifetime, and she includes those profiles or a mixture or, combination, whatever, of those people in her characters. And I think that just helps endear me to her writing, because I think she's being deliberate and not showing just a lily white landscape. Now, granted, the majority of the characters are, and I do not fault her for that. When I wrote a novel that's just sitting there waiting for me to come back to it and show it some love. But every one of my novel is Black, right? And I created them with profiles in mind that match the people of my culture, right? I'm not saying that I can't write other characters, I can't write characters from other cultures, but for my first novel, I stuck with what I knew, right? And it feels comfortable, it feels right. So I, for one, especially having just come off of reading a series about space creatures. Okay. And if that was in my first episode, so if you haven't seen that, please watch that. I, for one, appreciate diversity, and I appreciate anyone who attempts to write respectfully from, a diverse background. I think that is honestly the best you can do, because you are not going to please everybody. People are absolutely going to criticize, critique, and otherwise show, maybe some disdain for how a particular author chose to, portray a character of a different ethnicity or different race. It comes with the territory. But I think if you're bold enough and you're comfortable and confident enough, you can do what Elin does. And she just says, I'm going to do this because, and I'm speaking for her as a reader, obviously. I haven't heard anything from her. I haven't watched any interviews and anything like that, because I don't intend to. I really, like I said, I really want to just get to know her through her books. I really feel like she puts a little bit of herself in each of the books. I do read all the way to the through the acknowledgments. And in one of the book, what was that? The Blue Bistro, that I read, again, fairly quickly. She talks about how the storyline part B, there was a story and the backstory, the storyline that was, also interwoven into the story, into the characters' lives, really came out of her real life experience with her husband. So I said, now see, that makes sense, because the way she writes, it's so real. I'm telling you, it's like she's really taking the stories from the island. And sometimes she says that. Sometimes she says what the inspiration is. So read Nantucket Nights if you are into the juiciness of love affairs. If you want to explore female relationships and the ugly dynamics that can be there because, yeah, there were quite a few. There were quite a few ugly dynamics there, unfortunately. But also as a potential self-evaluation, in particular, if you find yourself in a small group or small circle and everybody has the character and the role that they play and the role that others play in that circle. And this was like a triangle, if you will, more than a circle, but everybody had a role and everybody played a part. And when the rubber started meeting the road, man, it wasn't pretty. And it was like, I was side-eyeing everybody's side, like, somebody look at this. Look. So I'm just glad I had this podcast. I started the podcast right on time to be able to flush out, get everything out of my system, and talk about my thoughts about these books, because I'd be talking to the walls otherwise, which I kind of am. I don't know who's watching. So the good thing about my series is that I am not going to only let Elin talked to me about Nantucket. I actually found another author that I had no idea. I know nothing about, hadn't known anything about until I went to the thrift store. So on the same trip that I got this, and I paid $3.50 for this book, I found this book by Pamela Kelly. And apparently it's a series. I don't know how many she has in the series, but this is book 1 in this series. And she says it's a Beach Plum Cove novel. So I'm assuming that Beach Plum Cove must be like the hotel or something like that. This book is called Nantucket Inns. I have book 1. This is book 1, book 4, book 6, and book 8 over there. They were all in the thrift store, and I paid $2.50 for all of them. We'll talk about thrifting on another day. But I get a lot of my hard copy books through the thrift store, and I just give them right back when I'm done with them. But I'm actually very excited to see another side, if you will, of Nantucket. These are very short reads, and that's probably, again, because they're supposed to be beach reads. Elin can get a little wordy. Her books can get a little thick, but you read them. I'm telling you, you just can't stop. And she's earned the title Queen of the Beach Reads. I believe it. I can see it. So anyone else who's kind of trying to come in on that territory, I'm extremely interested in seeing this person's perspective on the island of Nantucket, what she writes about, her voice, all those good things. So that's it for this episode. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you have read Nantucket Nights or any of Elin's books, please chime in on what you think about her books, her writing style. I'd love to hear from you. Like I said, this is definitely a stan page. I kind of believe I've crossed over a fan, but I'm not obsessed. Like, I am not, out there, trying to find every single detail of her personal life or anything like that. But as far as her books, I'm going in. I'm going in because they take me to a place where books are supposed to take you. They make me enjoy reading, make me yearn to be back in that place. And it inspired a solo trip that I'm going to take later this year. So I'm really happy about that as well. Specific to Nantucket Nights, if you were triggered or somehow, impacted by the themes of the book. And again, a lot of the very hurtful, heart-wrenching and strings pulling, just let me know about that. Chime in there. But remember, try to give no spoilers. I'm a big no spoiler type of person. I gave themes and everything like that, but I don't want to give titles and names and character names and stuff like that, because if people haven't read the book, I want to try to entice them to read the book. But you can basically talk about it as a review, and try to be as general as possible, how many stars you give it, all that good stuff. You know how to do it, So thank you so much for watching. I read what I read, and it doesn't matter if you read it in a hard copy. It doesn't matter if you listen to it. It doesn't matter if you read it on your Kindle. And it doesn't matter if you feel your way through. If you got a book, whatever way you read it is how you read it. We're no book snobs over here, okay? Read on, all right? Read on, my friend. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video.